Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our weekly and this week very special edition of our Sweet Questions 2. Today we have the immense honor to host the United States Special Envoy for Monitoring and Combating Anti-Semitism, Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt, and it's in our office in Paris. As part of her important mission throughout the world, Ambassador Lipstadt is visiting France these days as well as other European countries. Aside from her current position, Ambassador Deborah Lipstadt has a storied career as a historian, academic, and author. She published several important books: Denying the Holocaust in 1993, Anti-Semitism Here and Now in 2019, The Eichmann Trial in 2011. Ambassador Lipstadt is probably best known for having been sued for libel by one of the world's leading Holocaust denier, David Irving. That trial was depicted in the 2016 film Denial, which was based on her book History on Trial, My Day in Court with a Holocaust Denier, published in 2005. Most of all, Ambassador Lipstadt is a dear and longtime friend of the American Jewish Committee. And it's a great honor to have you. Good afternoon, Ambassador Lipstadt.
Thank you for having me. During that trial that you mentioned, I had great support from the American Jewish Committee, and I've worked closely with your previous director, David Harris, and now your new and current director, Ted Deutsch, is also a close friend, a compatriot, and someone who knows Capitol Hill very well.
Indeed. So let's start with our first question. As the US Department of State's Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, can you tell our audience what are the US foreign policy priorities when it comes to combating anti-Semitism throughout the world?
The US stands firmly opposed to expressions of anti-Semitism, to expressions of hate, to expressions of prejudice. And as the person to whom I directly report, Secretary Blinken, has said once, and said it in fact when he was introducing me at an AJC, the Global Forum, I think it was, meeting in June, that we have positions such as the one Deborah Lipstadt holds, not because we're perfect, not because we don't have problems in the United States. We have problems, and we're very aware of it, and this administration is strongly committed to fighting them and trying to rectify them. But that doesn't mean that we hold back in going out and addressing the concerns we have with the rest of the world. So I don't come to wag fingers in people's faces or to say we're perfect and you're not, but to say this is a problem, we consider it a problem, and we want to help you address it, even as we address it ourselves.
Thank you very much. Now, Ambassador Lipstadt, you travel the world to collect analysis on the different situations of anti-Semitism in various countries. You've just arrived in Paris for a visit, and you will go to Strasbourg. What is it that strikes you the most when it comes to the situation of anti-Semitism in France?
Well, I've only been here for a day, but of course, before I was given the honor and the Senate confirmation to serve as an ambassador and be the special envoy. I've studied French anti-Semitism, and anyone who's concerned about it has followed Ilan Halimi, Hiper Kasher, Sarah Halimi, and so many. I remember back the attack on Joe Goldenberg in the Marais. So clearly there's been a problem here in France. There's also some positive things that you see. As a historian of the Shoah, I was just talking with my colleagues about this. If you look at pictures of the July 1942 roundup for Valdiv, and when they rounded up the Jews, particularly the Jews who did not have French citizenship and French had been here. They've been here a long time, but they were Juif and not Israelite. If you look at the pictures, you won't see any Germans in the pictures. You see gendarmes, French gendarmes. It was something conducted by the French. And the French played a great role, the French authorities played a great role in that roundup and in many of the other anti-Semitic events in Evian, etc., etc. I'm sorry, in the South as well, in Batin and Laval, etc. But then to add to that, after the war, there was a refusal of France to really acknowledge its role for many decades. And I believe starting with your Mitterrand, with President Mitterrand, and then continuing in administrations thereafter, and certainly in the current French administration, an increased willingness to recognize that what happened in the 40s and their not failure to recognize it, but their burying of it. So that's a very positive, I think, development. At the same time, there are many things that are happening here that are causes of concern. Concern not just to us from outside, but causes of concern to many people in the French leadership. And so there's what to look at and say this is very good, but there's what to look at and say this is a matter of concern, coming from many directions on the political spectrum, coming from different groups, coming from radicalized Muslims, of course not the entire Muslim community, that would be a terrible thing to say, but radicalized elements, and the need to address it directly and honestly.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Lipstadt, our last questions for you. You are also a well-known historian and expert about the Shoah and about revisionism. Looking at the millennial history of anti-Semitism in the world and the current resurgence of the phenomenon in several countries, what is it that worries you the most? And what is it that gives you the best hope that we can gain victories against this?
I'll start with the last part. The thing that gives me the greatest hope is that my country and many other countries have taken this problem seriously enough that they have special representatives, the EU, your country, and as well, or France as well. In my country, not only do we have an office to monitor and combat anti-Semitism at the State Department, but Congress, the Senate, thought seriously enough of this position to raise it to an ambassadorial level, which is the highest level, that it can be in terms of a diplomatic level. That's something. That is quite something. What worries me, of course, is the physical danger, and to Jews, to Jewish institutions. And sometimes it comes as a direct attack on Jews, and sometimes it's couched in anti-Israel rhetoric, and that's not to say criticism of Israel, but the existence of Israel, associating Jews with it. Just because you're Jewish, we attack you because we're mad at Israel. It's just a strange kind of connection. But what worries me the most, and I know the American Jewish Committee has been quite involved in this, is that there will be young Jews who will go underground in terms of their Jewish identity. That, they will know that when they walk in the street, even if they're going to synagogue, not to wear kippah, but wear a hat or something like that, that they will celebrate Shabbat, with friends, but they won't announce to their office mates, or their colleagues, that I'm having Friday night Shabbat dinner. That they'll become what we used to call about Spanish Jews, Marranos, hidden Jews, conversos, so that, and that's not a healthy way to live in any aspect, no matter what your identity is. That worries me.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Lipstadt, for answering our questions. Thank you all for listening to us, and see you next week.